Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Dan Shapiro.
Hello, everyone. Hope you got your refreshments, got a little coffee. I know there's some people traveling from very far away places and dealing with some pretty severe jet lag, so hopefully everyone's refueled and ready for the next set of sessions. I'm going to bring up Chris Hoyt in a moment, and I'm really excited for you to listen to what he has to share. But before I do that, I'm excited to announce this year's most in-demand employer rankings. Last year at Talent Connect, we talked about how talent brand was becoming an ever important part of how we succeeded as recruiting teams. And yet, one of the biggest challenges in branding is that it's very hard to measure our success. And yet, as Jeff mentioned earlier, it's really hard to be successful at something if you can't track your progress over time. And on LinkedIn, there are over 25 billion interactions that take place between members and companies. And if we mine all of that information, we actually get a very accurate view of, across the entire global economy, which companies are most sought after as employers. And many of you have put this into practice over the last year by leveraging our Talent Brand Index, which gives you a sense of how you're performing against key talent audiences relative to your competition. But it also lets us build a list of the 100 most sought-after organizations around the world. And so I'm happy to share that with you now for 2013. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out numbers 6 through 100, and then we'll unveil the top 5 one at a time. So here you go. The top 100 most in-demand companies across LinkedIn. Anyone see their names? And now the top 5. Number 5, Microsoft. Number 4, Procter & Gamble. Number 3, Unilever. Number 2, Apple. And for the second year in a row, number 1, congratulations to Google. With a round of applause. Now, a couple of notable stories. I wanted to congratulate Amazon for cracking the top 10 this year, at number 7. And I wanted to congratulate Spotify at number 99 out of Europe for being the smallest company to make the list. And one of the things that's been exciting this year is that the list is a much more diverse population than we've ever seen before. Particular success in the oil and gas industry, really investing in their talent brands, building followership through examples like what I showed Shell was doing earlier today. And also, it's a more global list. Increasingly, employers from Europe and Asia are successfully becoming globally recognized on LinkedIn. So this list is now available at linkedin.com/indemand. I recommend that you check it out. And next week, we'll be launching similar lists for other regions around the world at Talent Connect London. And to share some tips from his experience on building an amazing talent brand at any budget, I'm excited to welcome up Chris Hoyt from Pepsi. Come on, Chris.
Whew. There's a lot of people in here. So hello, LinkedIn conference attendees. Oh, no. When I get up on a stage or in a room and I say hello, you're supposed to say back to me, hi, Chris. So let's try that again. Hi, conference attendees. Hi, Chris. Ooh, there are a bunch of you in here. Can we turn the lights up for just a half a second? So I told my mom that I was going to talk to a whole bunch of people, and she's like, well, how many people is that, baby? And I said, it's a shitload. So everybody wave hi to my mom. All right, and just because I'm learning from my kids, I'm going to take a selfie. All right. So one other thing before we get started, as I walked up here, Jeff actually handed to me, I guess this was supposed to go in your bags when you checked in. And he's asked that I give up some of my session time to get this to you. So I just want to say thank you. There's apparently a Talent Connect pledge. Did anybody get that in their bag? They didn't? All right. So if you'll repeat after me, we'll go through it real quick. It'll only take a second. I promise to strengthen my network. I promise to learn more about talent branding. I promise not to split 20 on the auto shuffler blackjack table when the dealer hasn't shown a bus card. All right. I promise to engage with the speakers. I promise not to repeat things other people say. That's important, right? We see a lot of parroting, and a lot of times when we go to conferences, we see a lot of really cool stuff that we want to implement and we want to take advantage of, and we go back to the office and we want to share it and we talk about it, and then somebody goes, "That's awesome. How do we do that?" And the reality is, it can be tough without relevance, right? So I want to work today to make our talk about talent branding relevant no matter what, right? And I'm just going to share a couple of things about the journey that we've been on. But I will tell you, I was really excited to get to come up and present to all of you. Very excited. Love, love, love to share. Almost as much as I love, love, love to learn. So we were going to go big. We were going to go really big, right? The idea was that maybe when this kicks off, we provide all of the snacks and beverages. You may have seen there are some less favorable snacks and beverages out today. But we were going to provide all of them throughout the conference, right? Really branded up big. One of the other conversations we had was about bringing in a big Pepsi delivery truck, right? Literally, boop, 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 back it up to the stage. I come running out at everybody waving hello. They'd bring out some of our team and support on dollies. These are real conversations. And we even entertained the idea of letting me zip line down onto the stage. Now, I like a good zip line. But I'll tell you what, there were actually two conditions. The first was LinkedIn. I had to swear to wear more than a Speedo. We came out. And the second was if I zip line to a stage in front of 3,000 people in Vegas, I had to get some sort of honorary Cirque du Soleil, like badge or certificate. And I'll tell you why I struggled with doing any of these. One of the challenges that I have, whether I'm sharing in front of 100 people or 1,000, one of the things that I really struggle with is when I share the things that I've really been blessed to be able to take part of, right, and teams I've been able to partner with. I get the response back that, well, of course you're able to do that. You've got Pepsi money. Or everybody already knows who you are. Of course you can get away with that. And I got to tell you, that hurts a little, right? The reality is, quite honestly, if I had Pepsi marketing money for our recruiting and marketing initiatives, don't you think I'd be up here with Beyonce? I wouldn't be up here all by myself. Quite honestly, oh, that looks so good up there. Much better than on my laptop. I'm a fan. The reality is, from a marketing and budget standpoint, every dollar for recruiting is important at PepsiCo, just like it is at your organization. We have to be really smart with what we spend. We have to be frugal in some areas, and I'm not going to lie, and sometimes we try to figure out how we do it for free. So it's very important that we track all of those dollars and that we watch them very closely. So budget, and we have those tough conversations internally. I just had one 3 days ago, right? Talking about where our spend went. How are we going to do that next year? Ask our global account manager, he knows. We're always talking about challenges. So regardless of the size, budget is always an issue, right? We don't have that big marketing money that you might perceive for us to have available as a Pepsi brand. And I'll also tell you, believe it or not, we have brand recognition challenges. We honestly do. It's easy to make the connection between Pepsi and PepsiCo. The name is there. It's very simple, right? The challenge we run into is that if you want to work for Gatorade, you want to work for PepsiCo. If you want to work for Mirinda, if you want to work for Doritos, if you want to work for Cheetos, Mountain Dew, any of our global brands, you want to work for PepsiCo. And sometimes that's a different or difficult connection to actually come to. I'll give you another easy example. We hire some of the most amazing number crunchers, right? Anywhere in the world, right? In our accounting and finance group. But there aren't a whole lot of kids that go to college to major in accounting and finance with PepsiCo top of mind as an employer. So you can imagine that when we're looking for professionals in HR and professionals in groups like finance, it can be a little bit more of a challenge to get some of that recognition out front, right? And also, in some cases, and around the world, while their cupboards might be full of our amazing product, right? And they may have our beverages all up in that refrigerator or cooler, they've never heard of PepsiCo, certainly as an employer. So our recruiters have to actually push or work to get past some of that recognition. And so that's what, when we talk about employer brand and delivering some of that, that's one of the big challenges that our recruiting and certainly some of the recruitment marketing that we do, that we push through. So let me ask you a question. How many folks in here, by show of applause, are just responsible for their employment brand or employment brand marketing? Okay, that's kind of a big deal. You guys are in a club of people that are in jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago. That's a big deal. When we talk about the shift and the change in our organization and in our function in recruiting, to be able to have marketing professionals within recruitment is quite an evolution, right? You're driving that push. So congratulate yourself. All these, these folks in the trenches and doing the search for the talent, these are the people that are working to help make your searches a little easier. And these are the people that are working to get that talent out in front, to sort of stock those ponds that you're going to go fish from. And I'll give you a really great and easy example. Meet Joe. Joe, we're going to call this Proactive Joe. Joe is making, he's sort of thinking about a career change, right? It's a very basic example. There have been some changes at the organization. He's starting to rethink his direction and what he does. And let me back up one. This works for a lot of different scenarios, but I'll tell you what, Proactive Joe is a lot more fun for me to work with than like stressed out hates his boss Joe. Right? No, he's so sad. So this does work for proactive, but the idea is we'll stay with proactive, feel good Joe. When Joe decides that he's going to move forward, next step, next evolution for him in his career, what's the first thing when he's decided he's made that move? What's the first thing Joe has to think of? Where's he going to go? Who is Joe going to call, right? What's next for him? And so the idea is that if you're one of the companies that is top of mind for him, if you're one of the companies, one of the first three that he thinks to click through or to dial or to ask about, you're relevant to him. Something that you have done, whether it's the culture, the delivery, or maybe it's just the amazing possibilities, something clicks with Joe. There's a connection, and so he's interested, right? So the idea around good employment marketing, employment branding, at least for us and on our journey, is to try to get top of mind. And we do that in a couple of different ways. Now, there was a study that came out a number of months ago. Not a huge study, but pretty interesting. It came back and said that an average of every 10 to 12 minutes during a workday, employees are interrupted by their social stream. Whether that be on Facebook, whether that be on LinkedIn, they're interrupted by content every 10 to 12 minutes during a workday. So to be able to figure out how to deliver content into that stream, how to get them so interested in the stuff that you do that you're part of that stream is kind of a big deal, right? And that leads us to the ability to try to figure out, well, if we can get in front, if we can connect with them, if we can be top of mind, how do we know that we're top of mind? How do we know that it actually makes a difference? So there's this term going around that I think you guys have probably heard before. And I don't know, if you haven't heard of it, it's fine. It's kind of a new thing, big data. Everybody's hearing about big data, right? Big data this, big data that. But the reality is, right, this is real data. Data that we use now to start making business decisions. The reality is that this is now data that recruiters are getting really good at deciphering, right, in recruitment teams. And I just want to go on the record. I'd actually like for us to start coming up with a new name for it. I think we're so far past big data. I think it's a new step in the evolution, right? I think we should call it something much more meaningful, much more relevant. I vote Big Data 2.0. We're at Recruiting 9.0, so I don't know why we can't go Big Data 2.0. But being able to take advantage of Big Data 2.0 lets us see that when we look at the difference for some of the marketing and the work that we do, we're starting to see a difference, right? So when we do targeted messages on LinkedIn to accounting folks, who can sometimes be a tough nut for us to crack, and we see engagement, right, with those accounting folks go up. And we see, directly related to that in some instances, time to respond to the emails that our recruiters send go down. Engagement up, responding more rapidly to emails or messages that our recruiters are sending. When we have marketing professionals, we see a jump in marketing professionals following us as a company. We see that go up. And that the time to find in some of those areas for those marketing pros goes down. When talent brand index, right, goes up in certain geographies, in certain markets, we see our literally across the board, that time to fill gets impacted. Now, these numbers aren't always easy to track, and sometimes you've got to really dig for them. But they're there, right? And you can do this on different platforms, but I'll tell you, there isn't another platform that makes it easy today. It's going to sound like a sales pitch, but that makes it as easy to draw that connection and find that story than in LinkedIn. And I'll tell you what we've seen over the course of the last few years. We've really invested in our LinkedIn footprint. Now, I'll share with you a slide. Here we go. This is sort of an internal slide that I use at PepsiCo, where I sort of share the progress, how we're doing. Now, if you'll pay attention to the top right, 3 years ago, we had less than 600 followers on LinkedIn. And we're now rapidly approaching 500,000. Less than 600, and to be perfectly transparent with you, they were probably mostly employees, right? We really weren't doing anything. So we decided to jump all over and take advantage of that platform. We decided to use the same approach that we had begun to use in Twitter, and where we were communicating more about, hey, we've got jobs, right? It was really more about, hey, we've got people. Hey, we're interested in sustainability efforts. Hey, this is our culture. And yes, these are career possibilities. And we watched engagement scores from the targeted updates that we sent out flutter from 5% to 1% to 10%, which of course gets a little more difficult, obviously, the bigger that you get. But for us, it was about taking what was working, watching the numbers, watching the data, and taking what was working and doing more of the good in a big way. And taking the stuff that didn't necessarily work, the tone or the timing or the content, and just sort of letting it, Darwinianize, right? Die on the vine and get it out of the way. So in an instance where we needed, and I'll just stick with finance, if we needed finance professionals, we would target our messaging. There would be more about the numbers of our business, the sales, the growth, right? The finance and accounting possibilities internally. And what we were finding, and we still sort of experiment with this today, is that LinkedIn was changing. Remember, this is a few years ago. LinkedIn was just moving towards that economic snapshot. And it sits today as one of the most interesting places you can go to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening within your set industry, within your space. And it's where the talent goes, not just to connect, but to find out what's going on and keep up. So we changed as well. And in the last year, we've really begun to take advantage of targeting particular geographies, right? And so for us, I sort of broke this into 5 or 6 that would make up sort of our segments around the world, these sectors and these regions. And as you can imagine, it gets a little complicated, right, as you begin to go global with some of this stuff. But I do want to call out just one thing. When you see this growth, those tweeters out there, you know who you are, typically come back with, well, of course your following grew that big. You paid for some of the marketing, right? So I'll share with you, and for those of you who know me pretty well, I'm almost overly transparent and a little too honest sometimes. This is an actual slide of some of our following growth this year. just a snapshot. And what you actually see here, Feb through August, the blue, is averaging between 20 to 30,000, or excuse me, 20 to 25,000 new followers a month. The blue is organic. The green is our paid marketing. Now, do we put some money into that paid marketing? Absolutely we do. Do we get great results? We get phenomenal results. We use it for some targeted audiences, for some targeted niche talent that we're looking for. But the vast majority of the growth comes from the content and the engagement and the responding, right? And the turnaround, right? When we connect with that talent. You, right, can drive this to some extent, obviously, at your organization. Listening to the audience. And I know some of this sounds incredibly basic. Some of you are going, oh, yeah, yeah. It's true. It really is that easy. Watching the growth. Working towards the relevance, what's working, what resonates, right, within that target audience. Now, I will tell you, again, with growth, not just in the following, comes a little bit of a challenge on a global scale, right? So at this point, it's just me and another guy in the office that are handling all of the things that come in, right, inbound, all of the requests, all of the inquiries, finding some of the content. You know, we work in tandem, obviously, with some of our marketing communications folks to get some of the great stories that we can share and deliver, but it's primarily just us. And so I knew that we needed a tool, because at this point, we're growing. A few years ago, we're growing at about 10,000 new followers a month at that point. And we're seeing a spike, actually, in Latin America, particularly Brazil. Now, I know it's probably kind of hard to tell by looking at me, but I don't speak Portuguese, right? So they were now getting inquiries to come in other languages. I barely mastered comprehensible English, right? So Google Translate is only going to get me so far with some of this. So we needed to find a tool that would help us manage content, workflow, time. We had to scale this. So I took a page from a playbook from our marketing department. And I sat down with them and we talked about tools. And those of you who are in the club, right, jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago, these will be familiar to you. Most of you have probably heard of them by now. But at this time, it was CoTweet, it was Hootsuite, it was Social Bro. I mean, there were half a dozen others that we sat down and we really looked at. And we landed on a tool called Hootsuite. Now, this is not an endorsement for Hootsuite. This is me sharing a beer with you, and 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 you, to show you what's in our toolbox. So Hootsuite allows us, right, the idea here was I was going to be able to get some people and assign them moderated access. So I could literally give limited access to the PepsiCo Jobs Twitter account, right, and to the LinkedIn company page, for example. Because at that point, right, if I want you to help with status updates on the LinkedIn company page, I have to give it all to you. And you can go in and make whatever kind of crazy changes you want. And you can imagine the social audit and compliance guys just love the idea of that. So this was a great tool that was going to allow us to lock it down. It was going to allow us to actually assign messages. So if you sent a message in to me, I could assign it to a team member. And they get an alert, and they can go in, and they can get a response. Or they can track down a recruiter. Right? I think every recruiter on our talent acquisition team has at one time or another received an email from me saying, hey, how about job number 12345BR? Any update on et cetera? Or do we have a particular university program in Sao Paulo? You know, that type of thing. So being able to assign those. On top of that, being able to schedule messages that go out. So literally create a content calendar, much like our marketing peers. And then just a real gem of a feature that allows us to report on engagement, followers, and the impact that we're having across all of those channels. All right, so I've got the tool, but now I need the people. So I'm sure you'd agree that if all of you suddenly went back to your workplace and said, all right, we're going to do this social recruiting thing, we're going to do this employment marketing thing, we're going to do it big, I need 6 people. I need six headcount. Because that's where I was at. I figured we needed 1 per sector, right? And the idea was that these guys will come in, they'll represent their sector, they'll talk about the employment opportunities in that market, they'll talk about the possibilities with our brand, et cetera. You know they would have thought I was crazy. Nobody goes back and just says, I need 6 headcount, bam, right? Not usually. So instead, I asked just to have coffee every morning with 6 people. That was it. I wanted 1 person in each sector to sit down with me, sit down with our brand, sit down in our tools, and spend the amount of time it takes to drink a cup of coffee and deal with the assignments that are in Hootsuite. Comment, status shares, right? Deliveries and follow up. Just that easy. So now, if you think about it, for the price of 6 cups of coffee that I don't even have to expense, we have an employment brand management team around the world for a company that does billions and billions of dollars of revenue a year. That's a big deal. That's huge. Because now we're managing that and we've got relevant content that are coming out and it makes all the difference. And it sort of seems like a no-brainer. And just about the time we got really excited and realized how good a move that was, it got better. It got better. Because it catches on. Recruiters helping, right? We're surprised at the impact that they gave to the efforts, right? The impact they had. When they would validate our audience, when they would respond, right? As easy as when someone in Egypt asks about application problems they're having and getting that answer back. Just the gratitude from these people when we treat them like human beings, applying for our jobs. How many individuals in here, by show of applause again, how many of you are aware of the Candidate Experience Awards? Okay, if you didn't clap, you turn to somebody who did clap and you catch up with them at the break. This is phenomenal. I'll give you a really easy tidbit that comes out of that. Last survey that we did last year when we took part of this for North America, of the 6,000 respondents that took the survey, 42% said that if they had a bad candidate experience with us, they'd stop buying our products. Now, I know there are some not-for-profit folks in here, but I don't think any of us are looking to go broke. 42% said that if they didn't feel like human beings, if they didn't feel like they had a positive candidate experience, they would change their buying habits. So what we're doing at this point, it's not really rocket science. We're humanizing aspects of the connection, or rehumanizing it, right? So employees, not just hiring managers, begin to play. Sharing industry studies, right, to connect with peers in some of our groups to talk about that. Actually helping applicants when they're trying to apply, not just our recruiters. I mean, can you imagine what a candidate must think when they go out and look and the only people singing the praises of your organization are recruiters? That can't be good, right? It makes a difference. It makes a big difference, and it sounds easy, and it makes a difference. And I'll tell you what, we believe it so entirely. We've begun to employ some of these social channels and communications within the onboarding process. It's not a bait and switch when you join PepsiCo. We realize that you are a person. We're hiring a whole person. So the reality is that, yeah, we connected with you on LinkedIn, and now you're part of the family, take part. We have formal ambassador training they can go through. We have emails that go out to them that say, here's some great news, share this. Here's a quick link to share it out to any of your social channels or connections, right? Which is why, as we really began to have an impact and really began to make a change in our brand and the traffic we were getting, I was really excited last year, almost to the day, when the InDemand ranking came out. These are 2012. I don't know if you notice. I'm at the 7 slot right there. I don't know if if you've worked with me at all, you know that I'm pretty competitive, right? I absolutely fell in love with data, not just because it shows us where we're moving the needle, not just because it shows us how we make a difference, not just because it proves what we're doing is working or where we should shift our focus. I sort of love the data and lists like this because it shows whose ass I'm kicking and who's kicking my ass. This tells me the direction I need. This gives me a target. A list like this last year gave me 6 people I could go pick a fight with. I was so excited about this data that I put in my annual objectives that we would be number 5 this year. Now, the redhead, it's my wife. The redhead, a little concerned with that because like the rest of you, our annual bonuses are tied to our objectives. I said, don't worry, baby, we got this. Look at all the change we've had. 600, we went from obscurity on LinkedIn to a company that you recognize, that gets recognition, and candidates are coming in and they're engaging with us, and our in-demand scores are up, and we're on every one of those lists in the top 20, and we got this. So, as I was sharing a few days ago with the LinkedIn team some of the content that I'd be talking about, I got pulled to the side. And they said, hey, look, we just want to let you know this is confidential, but because it's in your presentation, we really feel like we should tell you you're not in the top 5. I said, not in the top 5? What do you mean? This was tough for me. I'm still having a hard time. We had slipped to number 8. Oh my God, what was happening? How did that happen? And I had a really hard time with it initially. And so I'm laying in bed, I'm talking with my wife about this, and she leans over to me and we're talking about it, and she says, Cubby, that's what she calls me. Cubby, why do you have to be on that list if you're having all these other great things happen with this brand thing? And I realized right then one of the reasons why I love her unconditionally. She's so much smarter than I am. The reality is that I didn't. I didn't have to beat Facebook. I didn't have to beat Google. We were making a difference and we were having an amazing impact. And we were helping the recruiters find talent more quickly, engage talent more quickly, the right talent that makes a difference in how our business moves forward. And the reality here for everybody is you don't have to make that list either. It's not necessarily about being, I mean, it's always great to be on a list. Who doesn't like to be listed on a list? Depending on the list, I suppose. For special talents nobody's heard of. Jeff was showing me that in the back. He's so much better than I am. But you don't either. It's really about picking what you've got to get done and what you want to make a difference in for the business. Not necessarily about making that list. It's about ignoring the folks who say you paid your way to get there. It's about ignoring the fact that you don't have big Pepsi marketing money, but you're driving change in that organization, right? It's a big deal. So I'll leave you with a couple of really final basic thoughts, at least from my perspective. Experiment every single stinking day. Experiment with the tone of the delivery that you go out, right? The message that you send. Experiment with the timing that it goes out. Experiment with the actual message, right? And how you deliver that out to the individuals, and watch, right? Absolutely watch what's going on. Measure everything, right? Because the idea is that you'll be able to take from that experimentation what really resonates with the right audience. The audience that you're trying to attract into your culture. Maybe you don't want Facebook employees. That's okay. Right? Maybe that culture's not a match, right? Maybe you don't want PepsiCo employees. Don't call our PepsiCo employees, right? And that's important to measure all of it. And rethink your objectives. This was a tough lesson for me because of that competitive streak, right? Make sure you're measuring the right thing. Make sure that what you're putting up on the board is actually what's helping to drive the change or drive the business or drive the objectives, right? Really get you to that place where you're successful. And then the last one, which was a big learning, and I continue to push myself to remember this, is you can ask for help. You don't have to ask for headcount. And in a recruiting function, that's a big deal, right? We're typically more strapped, which is ironic because we're bringing in all the talent, but then it's tough because we're typically short on how much talent we have in, and we're overworked, and we're moving 100 miles an hour with a 5-mile-an-hour helmet on, right? Ask for help over headcount, and you'll be surprised at how that absolutely takes off, right? And can really help to get you where you're going. And you'll be surprised how excited some of your employees and non-employees are to lift your brand up and elevate it. Now, I will tell you this. Dear friend of mine says this all the time, smart guy. I'm just a student. Anybody who's pushing forward for this change and this delivery is a student. So my hope is tonight, I'm really looking forward to the party, not just because it's an open bar, it's a big win, but that I can connect with some of you out there and talk about, not just share what I'm doing, I want to know what you're doing. I want to learn from you as much as you've sat here and put up with me. So I'm on Twitter, @TheRecruiterGuy, and I want to thank everybody for their attention and have a great time.